Mr. Putter and Tabby Hit the Slope by Cynthia Rylant. Chapter 1, Slow. Mr. Putter and his fine cat Tabby liked winter, but sometimes things were a little slow. There were no tulips to tend. There were no berries to pick. The hammock was under 3 feet of snow. "We need some fun," said Mr. Putter to Tabby. He thought and thought, what is fun in the winter? Then he remembered. Chapter 2, The Best Fun. When Mr. Putter was a boy, he had a red sled with silver runners, and that was the best fun of all in the winter. He would go to the top of the highest hill. He would shout, "Cowabunga!" and down the hill he would fly. He was a very good sledder. He gave other people rides. Winter was not slow in those days, Mr. Putter thought. Why should winter be slow in these days? He called Mrs. Teaberry. Chapter 3, The Slope. Of course Mrs. Teaberry had sleds. Mrs. Teaberry had everything. She lived next door with her good dog Zeke, and they were always prepared. One look in the garage said so. Mr. Putter called Mrs. Teaberry, and the next thing he knew, he was on a slope in his mittens. He had a lot more than just mittens on. Tabby was wearing a sweater Mrs. Teaberry had knitted her for Christmas. It was a little itchy, which made Tabby a little twitchy. Her tail was very twitchy, but she was warm. Mrs. Teaberry and Zeke were dressed for the Alps. Mr. Putter looked at them and said, "You're dressed for the Alps." Mrs. Teaberry was very adventurous. Mr. Putter liked that about her. His adventures mostly came on a porch with a book. That is, until Mrs. Teaberry. Mr. Putter looked down the slope. He was ready. Chapter 4, Like a Rocket. Mr. Putter wanted Tabby to ride the sled with him. Tabby was not so sure. Her tail was very, very twitchy. Mr. Putter tried to put her on the sled. He thought she would like it. Tabby was not liking it. Then Zeke jumped on the sled with Tabby, and that was that. The next thing Mr. Putter knew, he had no sled, no cat, and no fun. Fun was already halfway down the slope. "Hop on," shouted Mrs. Teaberry. Mr. Putter did not want to hop on. He wanted his own sled. But he hopped on anyway. "Cowabunga!" shouted Mrs. Teaberry. Mr. Putter and Mrs. Teaberry flew down that slope like a rocket. They caught up with the other sled. Mr. Putter and Mrs. Teaberry looked over at Tabby and Zeke. Tabby and Zeke looked over at Mr. Putter and Mrs. Teaberry. "Good dog, Zeke," called Mrs. Teaberry. Zeke wagged. He was happy. Tabby twitched. She was not. Mr. Putter just held on. Chapter 5, Muffins and Cream. Everyone came to a stop at the bottom of the slope. Tabby jumped off the sled and went up a tree. She would not come down until Mr. Putter promised her muffins and cream. Then she came down. When Mr. Putter and Tabby went home, they took off their wet clothes. They had a warm bath. They had muffins and cream. A day on the slope had worn them out. So they curled up together in Mr. Putter's chair. They closed their eyes and no one twitched.